Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm okay. You know, all those memes that say that January is like 853 days long. That's kind of how I am.
You're done with it. You're ready to be out.
I had a meeting this morning and the guy said like we had never met before and he was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "Good." And then I was like, "What? Really?
Eh,
Do you really want to know?"
Yes, that's right. You have to decide between, am I going to pull back the curtain or am I going to just put the face up of, yes, fine. The answer everybody wants is, I'm good. How are you?
Right.
Well, here we are though, where you can tell me all. You can unload, unleash.
Yeah,
What is
so
on your
we
mind?
I rather than like tackle one of the hot topics of the day, what I thought would be helpful. This has just been one hell of a week between the inauguration and as a Jewish person, seeing Nazis in my government was not on my bingo card.
Right.
And then just all the TikTok stuff. And then also Meta, to be honest with you, there's just a lot happening all at once. And it feels very heavy. And I feel very overwhelmed and kind of despondent at times. So I thought it would be helpful to just
Talk
vent
it
and
through.
talk
Yeah.
it through rather than
Yes.
give our hot take on affiliate marketing or whatever we would maybe
We can
discuss.
pin that for another day when we're
Yeah.
feeling a little lighter in spirit.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess just in general, I'm feeling like we're running out of safe spaces online. And I've been thinking a lot about just our place as an agency and my place as the CEO of an agency who is actively helping these social platforms to make money and to exist, and how I feel about that morally. And then I just started thinking back to why I started the agency in the first place and why I fell in love with social media in the first place. And I've been trying to remind myself of that because I think it's helpful context to have. And what I've kind of come up with, and I'm still kind of feeling like I need to be under my desk in the fetal position, but that's my heart. Where my brain has landed is at the I started this agency because I feel like influencers, creators, whatever you want to call them, back when I started the agency, it was mom bloggers, are amazing and have amazing voices and have so much information to share and beautiful storytelling to share. And they often don't get appreciated as much as they should for that. And they deserve to be paid fair wages for that stellar storytelling. And then on the brand side, brands need to be able to find the right people to tell the right stories and need to be guided in that so that the content is as great as it can be and we don't end up with press releases copied and pasted into a video script. And like there's so much good to be done and there's so much good out there, and I feel like what I'm trying to tell myself is that at the end of the day the platforms don't matter. I mean, if you look back to you've been in this, you've had your agency even longer than I've had Sway Group. We started when it was blogs and Twitter.
Hmm.
I mean, we
Right.
rarely do I'm not touching Twitter with a 10-foot pole. See my prior Nazi comment. But I mean, we rarely do a blog program
Right.
anymore. Like the platforms are not forever. What is forever are these amazing people telling amazing stories and brands who need that.
Hmm.
So that's what I've been trying to remind myself.
It sounds like you're taking it from the macrocosm, which can be overwhelming, and what's my place in it, to the microcosm. Here's what I can do. Here's who I can impact. Here's who I love to work with and support. And beyond that, there's so many pieces of what you just said to dive into analytically from my point of view. But I'm also like, I'm reminded of not only do platforms change, like all of this is cyclical. I think people are like, oh, there's a trend of long form content. I'm like, that's not a trend, that's a cycle.
Right.
And are we coming back to a cycle of, if not blog? I've, look, for instance, and I'm going on a tangent a little bit, long form content to me means blogs, like you're talking about. But these days, it's not, it's Substack, it's
Right.
Medium. And I don't mind those platforms, but I still don't think you own it. If you're a Substack subscriber and they decide they're no longer enabling you to be paid for what you do, or they're going to pop you're just at the mercy of whoever it is. And that might be a good entry point, because what you're talking about a little bit is we are all at the mercy of the platforms and their ownership and their approach to fact checking and community management. We are the product, right?
Right.
We are what they're selling. So even if you didn't have an agency, you might still be grappling with this, because if you used Facebook, if you used Instagram, if you used TikTok, I don't think I got us very far with my response. I think we're stuck on.
And being at the mercy of these platforms, it doesn't always have to be as deep as, my deep existential thoughts of like, am I supporting a Nazi regime? Like, it could be as simple as, so just to give a little story, like at Sway Group, we're in the process of redesigning our website, and we had talked at one point about putting our Instagram feed at the bottom of the homepage. So it would just pull in the most recent, I think it was 4 or 5 posts that were on there. And it looked kind of nice because it was these nice little 4 or 5 squares on the bottom. And then all of a sudden, with zero notice whatsoever, Instagram just switched the format of their posts to vertical, not squares. And
Okay,
changed.
so nothing looks the same.
Nothing looks the same. Now it looks cruddy. We decided not to go that direction. But like, being at the mercy of these platforms, it can be super, super deep, but it can also be just as silly as the design of a homepage,
Right.
which is not that meaningful in the scheme of things.
So you're suggesting, excuse me, there might be a scale of importance, and the layout of the imported frames to your site is low on importance. The Nazis running the show might be high importance.
Yeah,
and
I
where
think
do
I'm
we
suggesting
fall?
that. Well, and I think I'm also I think it can be helpful for some people who might not feel as deeply and emotionally invested in who these platforms support and what's going on out there. I think it's helpful to point out that being at the mercy of platforms can also lead to just little annoyances. So the layout of your homepage, or if you're the social media manager for a brand and you've been formatting everything so that your Instagram feed looks all beautiful and matches up, and then all of a sudden the structure of that changes from 1:1 to 4:6 or whatever, being at the mercy of a platform means that you don't have full control over everything that you're doing, and they don't have to give you any notice before they make changes, whether it's a format change, a terms and conditions change, it disappears from the app store. There's a lot of there are a lot of impacts to the fact that we don't own our spaces.
Yes. It just occurred to me to sing out that that's the value of working with an agency like yours or mine, is that we are troubleshooting those things in real time, reporting on them, figuring them out. So an internal brand team doesn't necessarily have to go it alone. And I'm thinking of a program that we just ran where the paid partnership tool, which is required, also happened to stand in the way of the influencers boosting their content. And all of a sudden we were in the same place of, we've got to rejigger how we ask for the paid partnership tool to be used, because it does need to be used. That's part of the compliance piece, disclosure piece, and not have it limit them being able to it's technical. And I'm thinking of that poor social media manager who maybe nobody understands the amount of, it's sort of like taking your living room down to the studs and re-drywalling and repapering over it when the algorithms change. It's not necessarily just this little simple, they've switched that, so I will switch 2 things. It can be a complete reformatting. And what does that mean? And that's tough.
Has all of this turmoil and upheaval and just everything going, has it changed the way you're putting programs together for your clients? Like the structure of them?
It's not, but the reason it's not is because we have built into our process of laying out a campaign various checkpoints where we touch base with what's current, what are best practices, what are we hearing on the street or from influencers, So the last program we just did will feed into the next program, even if they're different brands, because we're just taking that thought leadership or the learnings into the next one. So we've baked in the process of, we never do cookie cutter. And I don't think you were suggesting cookie cutter, but I wouldn't say we could tell a brand, we just ran a program exactly like the one you want. We don't know, honestly, until we're into the development process, what it's going to look like, because it's based on so many minute variables and details.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like we put together so many annual programs at the end of 2024.
Sure.
And we're finalizing some annual programs for other clients who have, it's been a little slower for them to get their budgets approved. So we're still working on those. We just sent a proposal last week for a 2026
Wow.
program.
Okay.
So I think it's for those longer, for the clients who want a longer term engagement.
Okay.
We've had to completely change the way that we're describing what we're going to do. We've had to completely change the way that we're putting contracts together, because our proposals and our contracts used to look like, this is just an example, not an actual one, but like 5 influencers from the micro tier on Instagram, and then 6 influencers who are macros on TikTok, and like very, very specific on how many you're getting from every single tier on every single platform. And then we have guaranteed metrics along with that. And what we're seeing now is that what we've kind of flipped to is still guaranteeing metrics, because at the end of the day, the client's KPIs are not going to change. Like, it's still going to be that they need a certain number of engagements or they need a certain number of video views. But the way we're going to get them there has to remain totally fluid, because everything is so cray-cray right now, for lack of a better word, that it's impossible to say who will be doing this in what tiers on what platforms. And we're kind of leading with this story first, creator first philosophy, where we just find the right people and then we figure out where they should tell that story, and then we just slot them in like a game of Tetris into that budget, and then we just keep adjusting it and pulling more people in.
Yeah, because the other variable is the budget, right? That continues to change and cycle through the folks that you could count on working with. We've covered this in other episodes. They suddenly now have a management team that's layering on 30% more, or the licensing or whitelisting or organic or paid usage, like all of it now becomes a plus up. And we sometimes don't know that until we're in the room with them talking through it. So yeah, that's a good point. And now that I'm thinking of a proposal that we just sent out, same thing. It was very high level. And I'll be honest, what we focus on when we're doing that high level piece is the things that we know aren't going to change. The level of research, discovery, vetting, curating, the onboarding, negotiating, contracting phase. All of those things are really heavy lift for a brand. And we know that's where we're going to deliver a lot of impact, regardless of if it's 5 influencers or if it's 10. So that part stays the same, but I agree with you. It was very low on details about like concrete content deliverables and platforms. And absolutely.
I mean, you have to have you really need to have a higher level of trust with your client. I can imagine this is going to make the new business process a little bit trickier, because you have to build such a deeper level of trust when you're working with someone for the first time, to hand them a proposal that is light on deliverables and heavier on that upfront strategy work. That requires a certain element of trust that client has to have in you, which, for the clients we've worked with for 5 years, 10 years, 13 years, we have that, thank goodness. But for new ones, I mean, that's
well, there's certainly a lot of education that takes place these days, even with the celebration of influencer marketing and how every brand is now going to be all in on influencer marketing. For as much as we're hearing that, there's still education. Like, what does it really mean to partner with a Sway Group or a Maverick Mindshare and have us design and implement a full campaign? I think there's a lot of myth busting that has to take place. I think there's a lot of education and bringing them along and bringing them up to speed. They don't often, brands, if they're just reaching out and learning about your agency or mine, they often don't know what they don't know. They don't know maybe the right questions to ask. So I would argue that's probably going to be good business, been part of our business model to date. Yes, and are we doing improv now?
Yes.
Yes, and I would also venture to say that your ideal prospects, my ideal prospects, are those that have enough business acumen across the organization and the marketing efforts to understand that that's why you bring in outside experts, and you have to let the experts do what they do rather than micromanage, or rather than, and that it is a learning process. I was just telling you about a client that we have. We've run one program for them. Tremendous learning takes place in that first program.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be easy to let some of that learning be a point of conflict or friction. And I never see it like that. I see it as you have to establish this relationship with one agency or another, or with the influencers themselves. You're going to have this learning curve. At least we capture it and present it back to you with recommendations on how to utilize it and how to go forward from there. So I said a lot, but yeah, I think winning new business will take a new level of trust. And I thought you were going to talk a little bit about like safe spaces. Have they ever been safe spaces? And my, of course, goal and focus right now is the in-person piece, like a podcast like this, or coming to Nimbus, the event that I'm hosting, or going to some other conferences, or doing masterminds with other professionals. Like, how do we make safe spaces out of what we have, the hand we've been dealt?
Yeah.
And is that maybe more important?
I lived a great example of this yesterday, and it was in a bleak week. It was super heartwarming. I'm in a Slack community run by Leah Haberman, my former co-host on this podcast. So she has the In Case You Missed It newsletter, and she has a Slack community of the same name that is, if you subscribe at a certain paid level to her Substack, you get access into the Slack community. And it has become such a safe space. And with everything going on, yesterday, there's someone in there who's a social media manager for a large women's health organization. And there was some stuff going down yesterday with Meta censoring content. And it was just a very stressful day. And we were sharing resources and commiserating with each other and talking. I always say this, it's just so nice to go outside. Like, we love our colleagues and we love our family, but it's so important to also have like a peer advisory group of some kind, whether it's something formal like a mastermind, or like, I've been in Vistage groups before, or it's, as simple as a Slack community of people who are in the same space that you are. I do think that that's important.
Well, and at the antidote, when we talk about the macrocosm, feels untouchable. Meta is going to make changes. Zuckerberg's going to go on Joe Rogan and lay down the law, and we all just get to be passengers in that car if we choose to, and we all do choose to be involved with Meta. I mean, we just pretty much all are in it. So we can feel powerless, which is frustrating. And not just frustrating, but now if we're talking about politics and Nazis, it can feel terrifying. The antidote is action. I think the antidote is feeling like you can do something positive. And to your point, a peer group, a sounding board, a place to have meaningful conversations, that in itself can feel like you're doing something. And then you might get ideas. Somebody in my link, this is a whole, did you see the woman on LinkedIn who did the Nazi salute?
Yes.
Many, many, many times. So somebody else in my feed who I respect and admire greatly popped in to LinkedIn totally separately and said, hey, all of my 50 some contacts who are first contacts with her, connections, let me know why before I say goodbye to our connection. That was an act, like taking charge of, I don't want to be affiliated with somebody who thinks that's okay, or even once removed thinks that's okay. So we can get ideas from other professionals about how to navigate these emotionally charged places. We can get support. So I do think that's how I'm dealing with it, is more what action can I take, continuing to support influencers and advocate for them to be paid and advocate that they are not creators. And let's stop saying that they don't impact top of funnel because you don't understand influencers. Like there's a whole layer there. And somewhere between in the fetal position under my desk and like out on the street with a picket sign, I think I've found a place at least to kind of plant my flag or, get noisy about advocating for my industry. And that
Yeah.
feels a little bit more productive. Not that worrying isn't productive, but it at least gives me a sense of power over powerlessness.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. And I get back to what I said at the beginning, like just continuing to remind myself of our mission and why I got into this in the first place. And none of that has gone away. And then reminding myself of what you pointed out, that everything is cyclical, and yeah, we'll all get through all of this.
And I
craziness.
think reminding yourself that it is enough. So you embracing what mom bloggers, mom influencers, which then became parenting influencers, which maybe, the evolution, we can talk about the evolution of what we call them, but advocating for them, getting them paid, honoring what they do, celebrating it, helping them do a better job of it, whether through this podcast or through your counsel when you're running a campaign, or by telling your brand clients, actually, you don't want to treat the influencers that way. We want to do it this way. I think remembering that is enough. Like that's a lot in this world where so much is out of our control and there's a lot to be distraught about. That's good. That's bringing a lot of light to the world. And be good with that.
This has made me feel better.
Yay.
Thank you.
I love that. I mean, we could do a whole different segment about the ease with which we could all kind of fall off the wagon around the chaos. I mean, the TikTok piece alone, I watched it unfold through the eyes of my daughters, and it was fascinating. I was like, oh, we're watching this die in real time and real reactions and people outing themselves, people going nuts on TikTok, like, or on LinkedIn saying, I've had a TikTok account. Here's like unmasking themselves.
Yeah.
And then 12 hours later, like, maybe I didn't want to do that. But we're back. And again, watching it, the whole ebb and flow through my daughters was really fascinating, like a little slice of psychology today. And why was I saying that? But if we're not careful, it can be super stressful. I went to a networking lunch yesterday with women across all industries. When they found out what I do, to the last person, they're like, oh, what do you think of the TikTok ban? And I thought that was so interesting that every industry cared because they're people first, consumers of TikTok.
Yeah, no,
probably.
it's been on the local news. I had a conversation with my 83-year-old father about it. I mean,
right? And
it's broken through.
It is, and we will all be okay as it rolls by us and rolls back. And like, if we can kind of take a breath and, I don't know, have faith. We're doing good work out there. We're, connecting and we're communicating and we're engaging, and it's worthwhile.
And I think it's also worth reminding ourselves that regardless of who owns a platform and what's going on in the C-suite of any platform, and the fact that we don't own that space, that said, those spaces can be a place for us to come together and to share good information. And it's worthwhile to keep putting that good information out there and to connect with real people. Absolutely. Out there, and like just to remember the good pieces of social media.
Right. Which brings me back to, you were saying when I started, I'm having trouble doing the math, but I know I had small children. And at some point, even before my business, it was a lifeline to other moms who are home and pulling their hair out and bored out of, their minds. And that was enough, that was enough to make it worthwhile to me. So you're right. It is evolving and will continue to evolve, but we can still find these really great threads to pull that make it valuable to be here and to be in conversation. And then we can use it. Also, I don't mind leveraging it for helping brands get their message across or helping pay creators and influencers for their brilliance. That's kind of fun. It's almost like play.
Yeah.
And it can be okay to play, even in the direst, I think, of days.
Probably more important to play in even the direst of days.
Yeah.
Is that a word? We made it up.
I'm going with it. I like it.
I'm going
It's probably
with
a
it
great place to wrap this up, unless you have
Yeah.
more thoughts about the...
No, I'm good. I feel we accomplished my goal of you making me feel better. Thank you.
I am always happy to help in that regard, my friend. It is wild days. I feel like, you pick the word. Some people pick a word for the year. A couple of weeks ago, I was like, fuck it. My word is unpredictable. And that is not aspirational. Like, that's not what I'm hoping for, but why not go with it? Because there is just no telling how any of this is going to turn out. So why try?
You might as well be prepared for the unpredictability.
Yeah. Let's go with that it's
Yes.
actually strategic on my part and not just I've given up.
Right. Okay. Well, I will see you next week, and we will have made it through another week.
And almost through January.
Yes.
So you'll be happy about that.
Yes. And I thank you for the pep talk.
Sounds good. Anytime. See you soon.